Hello, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the ARPA-H Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox Proposers Day. Happy to have such a large group that it continues to grow. And our plan for today is to start out by talking a bit about ARPA-H and then describe the Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox effort and run through some of the frequently asked questions. So before we go ahead and get started, I just wanted to run through a couple housekeeping items. So first off, we're asking that if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. You can find the Q&A feature in the toolbar next to the raised hand. And if you go ahead and click on that, you can submit questions to the ARPA-H team, and we will cover FAQs at the end. Due to the large volume of folks online, we can't promise to get to all FAQs in this 2-hour session, but what we will do instead is cover common questions, some of the themes that we're hearing, and we will also post a comprehensive list of answers to the questions that come up at a later date. So please do keep on checking the website to get more information about the questions that come up. We also want to flag for everyone that we're anticipating that teaming will be important in order to achieve the goals of the ARPA-H Biomedical Fabric Toolbox effort. So specifically, that can mean collaborating actively with other performers on the program and also teaming prior to submitting a proposal. So if you are interested in connecting with other community members in order to form teams, we'd encourage you to go to the arpah.gov website, specifically following the link about BDF teaming. So today we'll start out by talking a bit about the ARPA-H model. I'll be introducing a bit on the mission of ARPA-H, followed by more information about the office, the Resilience Systems Office that I lead, and what unique attributes ARPA-H program managers have, so that hopefully by the end of that section, folks can better understand the unique type of funding approach that ARPA-H takes and how the Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox effort might fit within that. Then we'll be talking a bit more about the specific solicitation on the Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox, known as the BDF Toolbox, and get into more details about the specific technical areas, things like metrics and the program schedule. And we'll spend a few minutes at the end of that section talking about a partner solicitation coming out of NCI and Frederick National Labs. I'll hand it over to my colleague, Erica Kim at NCI, in order to cover that. Then we'll be talking about acquisition and application processes, as well as cost proposals, and finally concluding with frequently asked questions. So by way of introduction, hi, I'm Jennifer Roberts. I am the director of the Resilience Systems Office here at ARPA-H, and we'll get into a bit more about what the Resilience System Office does. At this point, it's effectively the office within ARPA-H that is launching the Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox effort. So the overall mission of ARPA-H is to accelerate health outcomes for everyone, accelerate the improvement, rather, of health outcomes for everyone. And there's a couple different pieces to that. The first one is accelerating, which signifies that we are an advanced research projects agency. So our goal is to take emerging research that has huge amounts of potential to help folks in the real world and move that research from an exploratory state into something that can help people through either some type of an application or some type of novel, new paradigm shifting approach. At the end of the day, we're interested in improving health outcomes. So while as scientists, we all do appreciate knowledge for the sake of knowledge, that isn't the primary focus that drives ARPA-H programs. Instead, it's moving the research and the technology development closer to a real world improvement in health outcomes. So we want to get novel scientific advances out into the real world where they can be helping folks. And then the for everyone piece, that signifies that we're not just interested in the next greatest biomedical breakthrough. Of course, that is something that's exciting. We are also, though, interested in things like access and affordability. So we're interested in taking areas where perhaps there is an existing intervention or there is an existing approach today, and it's not getting into the hands of the people or the patients that need it. And we want to be able to take that existing intervention and make sure that it is reaching the entire population that it needs that new technical breakthrough. So the ARPA-H organization is a brand new startup agency inside the government. It's rather unusual. And one of the mandates was to pursue ideas that break the mold on how we normally support fundamental research and commercial products in this country. So there's some important pieces there. So we have a number of very important partner agencies, such as our partners at the NIH, that focus on fundamental research and hypothesis-driven research, which is incredibly important. We also have partners in the venture capital community that work on innovation and next generation biomedical technologies and other types of software advances. And where ARPA-H fits is we want to support areas of research and innovation that are not well supported by either the funding agencies that support fundamental research or the venture capital community. So really, we're looking for those gaps that are not well served by other parts of the funding ecosystem in order to identify these areas where ARPA-H can come in and effectively turbocharge investments for a short period of time in order to change our perception of what's possible. ARPA-H is a new organization that reports directly to the HHS secretary and then has a dotted line to the NIH director. So it is an independent agency within NIH, but with a direct report to the HHS secretary. We have an initial $2.5 billion of appropriations, and we're hoping, of course, to continue getting more appropriations along with the rest of the government in the very near future, fingers crossed for everyone there. So the ARPA-H health ecosystem is very, very important to our success as an organization and our ability to make it so that whatever breakthrough research and technology development ARPA-H funds makes it out into real world application. So there's a number of groups that are very important to point out. So the folks that we serve. So at the end of the day, we want technologies that are developed at ARPA-H to make it to patients and healthcare providers and key members of the public, so that, again, we're developing advanced technologies that are helping people in the real world. We also have a performer community that can include folks from academia, can include small and large companies, nonprofits, hospital systems, et cetera, and these are the folks that are doing the research in order to develop these new paradigm shifting breakthroughs. And then we also have a number of partnerships with folks like private investors and other federal organizations, our partners at NIH, where here we're working with other organizations to both identify areas where there are gaps, where ARPA-H could make a significant investment in a short period of time that would benefit the overall ecosystem. And then we're working with those partners to develop a sustainability approach for any of the technologies that we're developing. ARPA-H has 4 mission focus areas. The first is Health Science Future, where we're looking at expanding what's technically possible. This is really about fundamental advances on the biomedical front that can include things like platform technologies that would help us treat many different diseases with a single approach, and more generally, research advances that will change our perception of what's possible in the biomedical front within the next 5 to 10 years. Scalable solutions focuses on things like access and affordability. So how do we make sure that the interventions that we have today are making it into the hands of folks that need them? This can involve things like perhaps taking some type of health intervention that's only available in an academic medical center and miniaturizing it so that it can function in a home health setting, or taking some type of therapy that might cost $1 million or $2 million per dose and bringing that down in cost so that it can reach the patient population that needs it. Then we have the proactive health thrust area, which is about improving and prolonging periods of health and well-being. So that can include things like preventative medicine. It can also include things like technologies to help folks autonomously age in place while maintaining independence. And then finally, the Resilient Systems Office. This is the office that I lead at ARPA-H, which is working to build a more integrated healthcare ecosystem. So for Resilient Systems, we're interested in improving the robustness and adaptability of the systems that health and public health depend upon. So this could include things like electronic health records, data infrastructure for public health, infrastructure to support supply chains, and then more generally, looking at the socio-technical aspects of any of these infrastructure type systems. So in terms of the socio-technical pieces, that's really looking at the system that's formed by the combination of the people plus the technology to make sure that that combination of people and technology is working effectively together in order to help provide high quality care to everyone. So at the end of the day, ARPA-H aims to develop programs that are move toward very aspirational goals. So these goals about new types of technical breakthroughs or new types of paradigms that could fundamentally change, again, our perception of what's possible. So just providing a couple examples of programs that have already been announced. We have one that's looking at interoperable technologies that would help surgeons remove 100% of tumors the first time. So right now, often when folks go in order to have some type of surgery to remove cancer, it's not always the case that 100% of the cancer is removed. Can we have tools that make it so that surgeons are able to remove 100% of those tumors almost every time, the first time around? We also have a program on osteoarthritis. Can we make it so that joints can heal themselves? And can we make it so that people would no longer need knee or hip surgery because instead they can get an injection that would regenerate the bone and cartilage and therefore remove the need for knee or hip replacements? And then finally, the effort that we'll be talking about today, can we develop new types of data integration tools that make it possible for us to increase the value that we get out of health research data that is produced by thousands of different labs and hospital centers? the way in which ARPA organizations operate tends to be a little bit different than other types of government funding agencies, and it's very dependent on our program managers. So the program managers are folks that come in with deep expertise in their field and also a very compelling idea about a problem area in their space of expertise and a novel approach to addressing that problem. So the program managers come to us with a proposal of sorts about their problem of interest, the limitations in the current state of the art and the current way that folks solve that problem, and a revolutionary new idea about how to solve that problem in a different way. Then the program managers come to ARPA-H for a tour of 3 to 6 years, and they start programs that can last for 3 to 5 years apiece. And in general, these programs are a very concentrated investment in a short period of time to test out these compelling new ideas. And the idea here is that we try a number of different approaches that might be quite risky. So this is a business model that comes out of DARPA. Folks might have heard about some of the work that DARPA's done. Out of DARPA programs have come such things as the internet, self-driving cars, GPS, the foundations behind the Moderna vaccine. So there's a history of this type of model leading to all kinds of breakthroughs. So what you'll see is that across the programs, there will be a lot of just very ambitious ideas that folks experiment with, and we try and give folks the resources to try them out. And then if you do that enough times, every so often, you end up with a success like GPS that everybody uses every day without even thinking about it. So that's the idea. We want to take that type of model, bring it over to health, and see how we can use this model in order to ultimately improve health outcomes. In terms of the programs, when a program manager comes to ARPA-H, effectively what they'll start out doing is designing the framing of that program along with technical areas. So the areas where folks can propose that will help them reach a larger goal. We do have something called the Homwire framework, where if you're interested, you can find more information on our website. And that's really just looking at this framing of what's the problem that you're trying to solve? What are the limitations in the approaches that folks take today? And what's the novel new approach that you're trying to take instead? Once folks design that program, they'll put out a broad agency announcement or a other type of solicitation. We'll talk about a new solicitation type later in this presentation. And then they'll solicit proposals and build a team of performers to work together toward that common vision. It's important to note that a number of ARPA-H programs are quite collaborative in nature, as the BDF Toolbox effort will be, where the expectation is that each of the performer teams will bring a different component of the overall solution, and they will work together as an overall program team toward a shared vision. Throughout the program, we will be executing and then measuring progress toward ambitious goals to see what's working well, where can we really continue to push the envelope, where are things not working as well as we hoped, and importantly, why are they not working, so that we can pull out lessons learned and pivot resources as needed in order to keep on moving toward the overall program vision. And throughout the process, what we're looking for from the program management team, as well as all the performers, is technical honesty, so that we are learning what's working well, what's not, what are alternate approaches, and really moving much faster toward the end goal, so that ultimately we can develop a novel solution that can either be commercialized or otherwise transitioned to be used by a broader group of people. In terms of unique attributes, I'd like to take a moment to talk a little bit about how the review process works at ARPA-H, because it is a bit different than what tends to happen at an NIH-IC. So it's worth spending a little bit of time on our approach to proposal reviews. So because our program managers come to ARPA-H with a very specific vision, what ARPA-H seeks to do is to provide the program managers with the resources that they need in order to try and achieve that goal. And that's resources from a funding perspective. It's also the autonomy to make decisions about how to build a portfolio that will move toward that vision in a risk-balanced way. So the program managers will develop solicitations, again, sometimes broad agency announcements, sometimes the new type of solicitation that we'll talk about a bit later in the presentation today. And then once proposals are received, the program managers will collect feedback from at least 2 other government reviewers and review the proposals themselves, of course, and collect information about strengths and limitations as those reviewers find in that proposal. And then importantly, the program manager has the autonomy to make recommendations that take into account those reviews from other government proposals and ultimately build a risk-balanced portfolio in order to help achieve the vision. So there's an important note here. While we are taking feedback from a number of different stakeholders along the way, at the end of the day, the program manager does have the autonomy to make decisions that they believe will create the best balance of approaches to reach their goal. So what that allows them to do is identify both for, say, approaches that we think are very likely to work, look through a number of different proposals that fall into that category and pick the strongest one, and also pick some of the more unique ideas that might not be funded in other places because maybe they seem a bit too out of the box. But the program manager has the ability to say, you know what, this really novel idea, it might just work. And it would actually be a really great complement to the rest of the portfolio. So really unique and innovative ideas are encouraged because, again, that program manager has the ability to collect a number of different approaches to each of the areas in order to create that comprehensive set of means to get to the program vision. It's also worth noting the program managers are term limited, and that is how we as an organization stay up to date and current with the technology. So again, just to reiterate, the proposals will be reviewed by federal employees. The program manager will have a good amount of autonomy to take the strengths and the limitations into account and build a risk-balanced portfolio. So we do encourage folks to come in with both comprehensive type solutions to the solicitation that we'll be talking about today, and also some more unique and innovative type approaches too, so that we can build that risk-balanced portfolio. Great. So with that, I'll now start talking more about the ARPA-H Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox. So the specific solicitation that we're looking to discuss today. So first off, I wanted to talk a bit about some key members of the team. So as I mentioned before, I'm Jen Roberts. I'm the director of the Resilience Systems Office. And I'd also like to introduce Dr. Andrea Bild, who just joined the team last week. And she will be stepping in as the program manager. So I am program manager today, but we'll be doing a handoff to Andrea. We're very happy to have her on the team. And then I'd also just like to call out that we have another couple folks Alistair is someone that many folks in the NIH community might already know. He's also a technical lead on this. And then Erica Kim at NCI is a technical lead as well. So for folks that are familiar with that part of the community, we're very happy to have them on the team too. So at a high level, we are interested in developing data integration tools that make it possible to extract more value from health research data that is produced by thousands of labs and hospital centers. What's important to note here is that we want to be able to extract value not just from data that we've already produced, which is very important, that's one aspect, but also make it so that it's easier to extract value with less effort from data that will be produced in the future. So we're interested in both in that retrospective, how do we make it so that we can get more value out of the data investments that have already been made, and pave the way for there to be easier collection of high fidelity information for research data and easier analysis of research data from multiple sources in the future. So to talk a bit more at a high level, if we think about what happens today, we have data that can be useful for biomedical research that's produced by organizations such as hospitals, academic labs, other types of labs. And many times that research data flows into a number of different locations, some of which folks might know about, some of which folks might not know about. Often there's differing ability to access that data. It can be hard to know what types of connections might be valuable to make across those data silos. And all in all, we have a very fragmented system without necessarily there being consistent technology solutions that can help us pull information together in a way that's low effort. What we're looking to do through the BDF Toolbox effort is to make it so that we're able to bridge across data silos and data sources in a way that's far less labor intensive and makes it much easier for researchers from different backgrounds, as well as patients and clinicians, to extract value and meaning from that data. At a high level, we have a number of different technical areas that we will be pursuing in order to meet that overall goal of increasing the value of the data that we collect for research purposes. So the first technical area is on automated data collection. And the idea here is to look at how we can make it much easier to collect the type of calibration and provenance and contextual information about the experiments that are being run in the lab or the other places where biomedical research data is being collected. So at the end of the day, what TA1 seeks to do is to create the type of software that's going to make it much, much easier to collect comprehensive context about the experiment and the data collection. So as that information is passed to more centralized locations, folks that are analyzing that data will ultimately have not just the raw data files, but also the context around how that data was collected, what type of provenance, what was the experimental intent, et cetera, so that they understand how that data can be used. So at the end of the day, TA1 is looking at how do we improve the content and the expediency with which we're collecting that high fidelity information. TA2 is focused on machine-assisted curation. Here, we're interested in looking at how to pull together and harmonize data that's coming from many different sources. So perhaps we have think on the order of hundreds or thousands of different labs or other types of hospital centers where we're extracting data. It's going into a variety of repositories that today may not be well connected. And how do we think about increasing the level of harmonization across this multi-source information? And also improving things like quality assurance in order to make it so that it's significantly easier to do multi-data source analysis. TA3 focuses on intuitive exploration. So this is much more about the human interaction side. So how do we have novel tools in order to make it easier for folks to find the data that's relevant to the questions that they care about and explore them in a less labor-intensive way. TA4 focuses on user testing. So TA4 will work with the other performer teams in order to identify researchers, clinicians, and patients, and also use cases in order to test whether the tools that are being developed in the first three technical areas are set up to be enthusiastically adopted by members of the user community. TA4 will also work with the potential users and the other technical areas to collect feedback in order to be able to help refine research prototypes throughout the effort. And then finally, TA5 focuses on both integration and cross-domain generalization. So we're interested in building redeployable platforms and data fabric technologies in order to make it so that we can increase the value and the usability of data across many different biomedical domains and disease types. And it's worth noting that TO5 is an area that will be solicited for at a later date. Right now, we are interested in the technology development in the automated data collection, machine-assisted curation, and intuitive exploration areas, as well as performers who can assist with user testing of those technologies. So at a high level, what we're seeking to accomplish through the ARPA-H Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox effort is to make it so that biomedical research data is easier to use. We also want to reduce the effort that it takes to integrate data from different sources. So, for example, we want things like machine-assisted curation to make it so that while we're not imagining that things will become fully automated in all cases, we can reduce the manual workload to be able to provide quality assurance and harmonize information across many, many different sources. We're also interested in developing these redeployable data fabric techniques. So think a unified layer of data services that can work across many different systems and environments, and develop models that can be applied across different disciplines and across different disease areas. So now I'm going to go and talk in a bit more detail about each of the technical areas. So first, the automated data collection. Here, we're interested in high fidelity, timely data collection, and we would like to reduce the time and manual effort to collect experimental data. We're interested in types of technologies that will increase the fidelity of what information is collected and the ability to collect that experimental context, the calibration information about what instruments are being used, all of this type of detailed context in a much more automated way. It'd be nice for that to both integrate with things like electronic lab notebooks, or perhaps support things like executable protocols. So software that helps make sure that experimental protocols are very reproducible. And we are interested in things like techniques that can or techniques or teams that can push the envelope on standard APIs and open APIs for different types of lab instruments. So in terms of the types of techniques and where the TA1 will focus, for TA1, we can think about pulling data from either a lab environment or EHR system, all the way from that collection piece to the delivery to a central location. So grabbing information from clinical EHR systems is of interest, especially if there is a reproducible process for de-identification. And at the end of the day, we're interested in these techniques that provide a lot more context and help streamline not just the collection, but also the delivery of that data to a centralized repository. TA1, as you might note, is broad. So I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about different types of proposals that we anticipate we might receive for TA1. So one would be folks that are focusing on data collection in a lab environment. So here, this could include automated or semi-automated workflows that capture more information about experimental intent or more information about the executable protocol. So think a way of capturing a very detailed experimental protocol that is both machine readable and human readable. So that's one class of proposals that is improving the fidelity of what we can grab from a lab. A second class of proposals might look at how to extract information meaningfully from electronic health records. And here we do have partners from NIH that are looking at different techniques, and we want to leverage different types of investments that have been made before. We're also interested in expanding the portfolio of techniques to pull useful information out of health records. Then the third area is streamlining data submission. So folks might be tracking, for instance, that for many NIH grants, there's interest in folks making data deliveries for any federally funded research. Streamlining the data submission process to make it easier for researchers to provide that data in a findable way is something of interest as well. So there, if folks are interested in that streamlining data submission piece, we're interested in comprehensive solutions that look at how to improve the automation of the data collection in the lab all the way through that delivery and that submission to a centralized data repository, as well as a little bit later, we'll note that there is a partner solicitation specifically for Frederick National Labs and NCI that focuses on a data submission dashboard for cancer data sets. So if you're interested in that, please stay tuned to Erica Kim's portion. And just noting for TA1, strong proposals will aspire to automatically capture the information that folks need in order to test for things like cross-lab reproducibility and making sure that we can accurately assess appropriate uses for data. Folks will also outline capabilities that focus specifically on different types of data or instruments. So we want specificity in terms of what types of data fall in or out of scope for your proposal. TA2 focuses on machine-assisted curation. Here, we're interested in how we make the data more usable once it's been delivered to either a common data repository or a federated set of data repositories. So the emphasis in TA2 is that multi-source preparation for analysis of scale. So can we have uniform ways or uniform ways of doing the quality assurance, detecting sample bias, processing omics data, et cetera? Can we have more comprehensive ways of harmonizing common types of semantics across many different sources, or perhaps many different types of data? We're also interested in things where we are looking at bias detection. So being able to identify when maybe there's a sampling bias, either in a particular type of data submission or more holistically, a sampling bias across a number of different repositories where maybe we are only representing part of a patient population across many, many different types of experiments. And in this area, we anticipate that there will be an emphasis on automated semantic mapping and transformation using things like large language models to augment human curation. And we're also anticipating an emphasis on standardized workflows for a variety of data types, including multi-omic data sets, metabolomics, proteomics, et cetera, imaging, single cell, et cetera. TA3 focuses on intuitive exploration. Here, we are looking to enhance data usability. And this is, again, the area that's focused on the human and computer interface components. So what we would like is to be able to leverage some of the new innovations, for example, with large language models, to make it so that folks can much more easily form connections across multiple data repositories. We'd also like for folks to be able to more seamlessly search across many different types of data to be able to perform comprehensive analyses with far less work. So for this area, we're anticipating things like chat-based search functionalities, AI-powered dashboards, and other types of intuitive ways to interact with the data for researchers who have a variety of different technical backgrounds. So think including computational and folks with a variety of different biological backgrounds, folks with clinical backgrounds, as well as patients. TA4 focuses on user testing. Here, we are interested in evaluating the usability of the approaches. So we want to be able to look at, again, how the tools are working for researchers from a variety of background, patients, clinicians, and we anticipate that TA4 will be actively engaged with performers across the program, helping to pair them with potential users and collecting feedback, and also providing some program-wide direction on things like use cases and areas, demand signals that we're getting from the folks that will ultimately use the technology. In terms of how things fit together, program as a whole is very interested in establishing and building upon open standards. The TA1 techniques will flow into the federated data repositories. TA2 will focus on the harmonization and quality assurance aspects, as well as equity checks, meaning checking for bias, things like sample bias. Then TA3 will provide that user interface, and ultimately our TA5 will provide an executable architecture that will pull in the most mature capabilities into a redeployable set of data fabric tools. Again, TA5 is not the topic for today. We simply want to flag that there will be another solicitation coming, and the intent is to create this redeployable set of tools that will both support ARPA-H as we as an organization set up data infrastructure to support our performer community, and also hopefully for many of our partners at NIH, so that we can have some redeployable tools that will work for many stakeholders. In terms of how to propose to an ARPA-H solicitation, for the ARPA-H data fabric toolbox, we are interested in proposals that address any combination of TA1, TA2, or TA3. We are also interested in proposals that address TA4, and it's worth noting that those folks that are selected for TA4 will not be eligible to be performers, either primes or subcontractors on TA1, TA2, or TA3. That's because TA4 is part of an evaluation team for the other types of technologies, evaluating things that are related to user adoption. So we want to make sure that there's no conflicts of interest there. Please note, we are changing the abstract deadline. So abstracts will be due on October 6th, which will hopefully give folks a little bit more time. And then we're anticipating that full proposals will be due on November 14th. If the government remains open, full proposals will be due on November 14th. If the government happens to shut down, please do look at our website. We will do our best to stick to the schedule, but there might be circumstances outside of our control that affect timelines, and we will update folks based through our website. And then just reiterating again, teaming and collaboration is highly encouraged. So the next few slides talk about just some best practices, both for submitting proposals to the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox solicitation, and in many cases, ARPA-H solicitations as a whole. So, folks might already be familiar with what NIH grant applications look like, or NSF grant applications look like, and each organization tends to have certain things that they value in proposals. So what the next couple slides aim to do is highlight some of those unique attributes that ARPA-H tends to look for. So strong proposals will propose use cases. And here we have 3 options that are specific to the BDF Toolbox. So we'd like to know, when you're thinking about use cases, are you thinking of first a cancer use case, and then in late year 1, year 2, generalizing to another disease? Are you envisioning a use case that naturally generalizes across many diseases from the outset? So, for example, use cases involving the relationships between genetics, treatments, and outcomes, where that type of use case could apply equally well to cancer or to things related to opioid misuse. Or alternatively, are you interested in use cases that bridge across data silos? Please be very explicit about that in your proposals. Second area has to do with metrics. So ARPA organizations tend to use metrics in order to communicate technical priorities. And effectively, what we look for is a progression of increasingly complex goals, right? So we are asking folks to propose metrics. In a couple slides, I'll have some examples where you're noting these are the places where our team plans to focus. And if we're extremely successful, let's say you want to focus on something that you're scaling the number of potential users that can use a system. You want to start with a baseline number, and then you want to increase by 1 order of magnitude, and then you want to increase by 2 more orders of magnitude by the end. So that's communicating a technical priority and also ambitiously what targets you're trying to hit. We are looking for both that progression and that clarity on what those priorities are, and also ambitious goals, with the understanding that we might hit goals where, we'll try real hard to get them. They might be possible, but at the end of the day, we might fall short, but it'll still be impressive to see how far we get. Even if we don't exactly make it the whole way, still, moving toward that ambitious goal will be really moving the needle in a significant way. It's worth noting that we are interested in challenges or net metrics that are expanding to broader sets of data types or across more diseases, and expanding coverage for more and more complex data types. Then moving on to extensions of the current state of the art. So this is worth noting. So at some organizations, effectively what's conventional is to do some great research, find an impressive result, and then submit that impressive result as a proposal in order to get funding for the next very exploratory work, right? So in some sense, the proposal includes prior work that has already happened in order to be able to get funding for the next innovation that will come afterwards. That's not the way that ARPA-H proposals work. Instead, what we're looking for is for folks to first briefly describe any prior work that will be a foundation for the proposed effort. And when describing that prior work, you can include things like figures and references and, other maybe pointers to algorithms or what have you. And then most of the proposals should talk about most of the page count in the proposal rather should talk about what novel extensions will be funded by ARPA-H. So we are looking for the expansions that will be made that will go beyond your prior work. So it's very important to explain that you will leverage X, Y, and Z, and you will expand or scale or build upon or apply or whatever it's going to be that you're doing to go beyond what has already been performed in that prior work, because at the end of the day, ARPA-H only funds new extensions. And then importantly, if you're in an area where there are commercial capabilities, please also explain how your proposed approach will go significantly beyond the commercial capabilities that are already out there. Strong proposals will also lay the foundation for technology transition. So what you'll see in the solicitation is that we're looking for a progression where we're pursuing aggressive metrics during year 1 and year 2, and then during the optional year 3, it will be broadening real-world application and maturing technologies. We're also interested in having folks maximize the use of existing and emerging. This gets into leveraging so that you're starting at that baseline, so that we are building upon state-of-the-art technologies to help make it easy to transition and make those tools available to a broader community in the future. Please do explain the type of applications that will help and how those tools will be adopted by the community. We're very interested in intellectual property rights that align with open source regimes. And it's important to select an appropriate cost point. So what we're also looking for is a price point that's commensurate with the scale and complexity of the proposed approach. Right. So if you're doing something that is small and exploratory and will involve a postdoc or two, then the price point should be aligned with that. If you're doing something that's a very comprehensive, well-engineered solution, then again, that's going to be a different type of price point, and we'll want to see more detail at that higher, more comprehensive scale. And then finally, we're looking for folks to communicate a commitment to collaboration. So one important part of this effort will be to sign an associate contractors agreement. So the associate contractors agreement is essentially, think of it as a multi-organization NDA where folks are agreeing to share the information that we as a program will need to share in order to make technical progress. And the associate contractor agreement effectively lays the foundation for folks to collaborate and freely share scientific information throughout the effort. So please do communicate that you have read and understood and are on board with signing that associate contractors agreement, because that will be a requirement for participation in the program. And then also, whenever possible, identify and communicate how your team plans to partner with other performers. So for example, if you're just proposing to TA2, talk about the interfaces that you expect to have with the TA1 and the 3 performers in order to help the program move toward comprehensive approaches. And just reiterating some expectations, selection of the proposals, again, is not consensus driven. The program manager is going to seek a diverse set of performers who can accomplish the goals of the program. They are looking for a portfolio of many different approaches, many shots on goal toward the same technical areas. So we're looking for that breadth of ideas. Again, performers should work together. That associate contractor agreement is key. Please make sure you cover it. ARPA-H funding, importantly, is milestone based. So folks will be proposing to meet these aggressive milestones. And there is a possibility of being cut if milestones and metrics are not met. And let me clarify that a bit, because on the one hand, we're saying do ambitious stuff. And on the other ones, we're saying like, well, if you don't meet it, there's a risk here. And effectively, we will also talk with selected performers about the level of ambition on those metrics. So if you propose something that's incredibly ambitious and you get most of the way there, that's great. If you're proposing something that's more conservative and don't quite get there, that's a very different type of conversation. So there is a balance of this aggressiveness plus, the progress toward the goals. But I think that the main point here is that it's not a grant-based organization, it's a milestone-based organization. So there is this need to continuously move toward these program goals. And then again, just highlighting references to prior work are of course important, but the bulk of the proposal should focus on the experience and the novel pieces. Okay, so the next few slides, I'll just run through some notional metrics. Importantly, these are notional. They are the type of thing where if one of these sounds like the type of thing that your effort will address, put that in your proposal and clarify the details that are appropriate for your approach. So we're looking for folks to take this as a starting point in order to come back to us with more detailed metrics that make sense relative to the approach that you're proposing. So to give you a sense, if we're talking about TA1, collecting more types of data, being able to make it so that instead of adding or delivering a new type of data taking months, we want it to take weeks and then days, because we have better automation both on the data collection side as well as the dashboard to deliver that data. And you can read through these in the BAA in order to find other examples. But at the end of the day, we're looking for that type of progression, months to weeks to days, or baseline with establishing some baseline, having 75% accuracy and then 98 to 100% accuracy. We want to see that that progression and that goal. TA2. Here, we're looking at the auto mapping pieces, the omics workflows, so appropriate metrics are needed for that technical area as well. For TA3, here we're looking at ways in which to make it so that the analysis can be expedited, so that we can find data more easily, so that there's a variety of different users that are supported. So clearly communicating where your team's going to focus is going to be an important part of the portfolio, or the proposal rather. And then TA4 is focused on that user acceptance testing. So to summarize, the program will be 36 months long with a 24-month base period, as well as a 12-month optional extension in order to really mature and integrate the technologies. During year 1, we want to establish baselines, and then in year 2 and 3, we will increase that emphasis on generalizability across disease, scalability, and ultimately integration. The program will be very collaborative, so we will have things like kickoff meetings, PI meetings every 6 months, and then a series of hackathons and connectathons in order to make it so that we are both coordinating as a program toward things like common use cases and also working together to identify these points of integration, move toward common open standards, and ultimately build a comprehensive set of data fabric tools. And with that, I will hand it over to my colleague from NCI to talk a bit more about the partner solicitation that the Frederick National Labs is putting out. And that the name of that partner solicitation or partner effort is the BDF Toolbox for Cancer. Over to you, Erica.
Thank you, Jen. So as Jen mentioned earlier in the presentation, the ARPA-H and NCI are partnering on this program to use cancer data as the first use case for the development of the BDF Toolbox for Cancer. So this effort will accelerate the Cancer Moonshot Initiative goals that NCI has been working on in the past several years, and select innovative cutting-edge tools that are developed from this effort will be integrated into the national cancer data ecosystem in order to maximize the utility of cancer data by broad category of users while preserving patient privacy. Next slide, please. Thank you. So in addition to the ARPA-H broad agency announcement opportunity, the NCI Frederick National Lab will solicit proposals that demonstrate deep expertise in cancer research and clinical trial data space, and connecting data submission workflows developed from technical area 1 with dashboard or dashboard-like interface. And if proposers are interested in applying for the technical area 4, the user testing and engagement technical area, teams that have strong engagement with cancer community are encouraged to submit their proposals to NCI FNL solicitation opportunity. So some key dates are October 12th for NCI FNL Bidders Conference and November 14th, which is the final due date for submitting full proposals to both solicitation opportunities. So please visit Frederick National Labs Business Opportunities website for further details. Thank you. Next slide, please. And with that, I will pass it over to Jennifer Mack to provide overview of acquisition details.
All right, good afternoon. As introduced, I am Jennifer Mack. I will be one of the contracting and agreement officers here at ARPA-H in support of the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox program. So I'm going to be digging into some of the acquisition details related to the effort. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. All right, so currently I have posted 2 draft announcements on sam.gov that hopefully you have seen. The first announcement I need you to open and read as the master announcement instructions, otherwise referred to the MAI. All right, so the MAI is your manual, right? It has overarching instructions and details that you will need to apply to the module announcement. All right, so the MAI is not what you are proposing to, meaning if you look at the MAI, there is no technical description of the project or program within it, right? So the MAI is only for you to use as a manual, a guide, a reference to successfully propose to the module announcement, okay? I don't want to undervalue it. It is very valuable. It has all the instructions that you need to be successful at that level, right? So then we go into the second document, which is the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox module announcement. All right, that first module, it is the first module announcement underneath the MAI. All right, within the BDF Toolbox announcement, you're going to find background information on the program goals, technical areas, and abstract and proposal instructions. All right, so as a potential proposer, you will want to use both the MAI and the module announcement together to write your response. All right, so hopefully that's clear for you. We can go on to the next slide, please. All right, so this slide represents some unique characteristics of the MAI and BDF Toolbox module announcement. So first, we have established module categories to help the government convey the level of effort we are anticipating. All right, with that said, the BDF Toolbox announcement is anticipating responses at the bit, the byte, and the kilo levels, right? You can see those on the screen. The important thing to understand here is that if you plan to propose more exploratory work or a subset of that technical area, you will likely plan to propose at the bit byte level. If you are proposing a greater level of effort, more complexity, something that requires more milestones, a greater description, right, you're going to be at the kilo level. So pay attention to that. You will see updates on the MAI and the module announcement coming out hopefully by the end of the week if the government doesn't shut down. But either way, you will see those on sam.gov. All right. We'll go on to stage submissions next. Apologies. Let me back up just a moment. I'm skipping ahead too quickly. I wanted to highlight the dollar values noted here. They should not be used as a limitation to submit the best solution. All right. Rather, those dollar values should be used as a guide. I want to note specifically that we also have page restrictions associated with these labor categories, or not labor categories, with the module categories rather. We have implemented these page restrictions to limit the number of iterations of the same information just to fill pages. All right, so this is something that I commonly see. So really, we're looking for clear and concise technical solutions. All right, so don't feel like you have to go to the kilo module level just to gain more pages, only to try to reiterate what you have said maybe 5 different times. So really just looking for you to, again, for those clear and concise technical solutions. So, all right, now let's go back on to the stage submissions. So the first stage is going to be your volume 1 submissions only. As shown here, right? You're going to have that technical and management document. You're going to have a basis of estimate, which is different than what I'm used to asking for upfront. But I do want to point that out because I'm not asking for a full price and cost proposal upfront. And then, of course, you have the administrative national policy requirements underneath the volume 1, stage 1 submissions as well. So now, as we go on to stage 2, I just want to point out, it's not stated on here, but it is stated in different areas of this presentation, that stage 2 submissions will only be if you are selected for your technical solution and asked by the government to submit that volume 2 proposal. All right, so stage 2 only happens if you get this invite saying that, hey, we really like your technical solution and we would like you to submit your full price proposal. All right. All right, so the last one we have on this slide is the module announcements. We'll have a bundle of attachments. Now, this has changed a little bit from the draft that's currently on sam.gov. All right, we have removed it from every single category and rather implemented something that would be a little bit more straightforward. So if you are proposing another transaction or feel that that would be the instrument the government finds most appropriate for you, then you will use that bundle of attachments that is very specific to the other transactions. If you are interested in doing or having a cooperative agreement, then you will use the bundle of attachments specific to the cooperative agreement. So I've tried to make it as clear as possible. And my hope is that while these attachments are not required, they are highly encouraged so that you have everything in front of you and everything you need in order to be successful. All right. So Let's go on to the next page, please, or slide, please. All right. So let's talk about the award types. As mentioned on other slides, we'll be doing we'll be awarding other transaction and cooperative agreements. We will not be awarding procurement contracts. So I will ask that proposers request the type of award that they think is the most appropriate for them. But I will say that upon looking over your proposal and the solution, I will, or another agreement officer will have the final say in that. And it's generally not something that we just say, hey, we're doing this. This is done in concert with you to make sure that we have the best award instrument available for you to do your work, right? So I will say, just to be hopefully helpful, if you are looking to deliver source code, a prototype, something along those lines, you will likely get an other transaction agreement. If you are doing some type of research that is going to result in just a report, then you will likely get something more in line with a cooperative agreement. Again, we can have discussions as we get to that point in the process. All right, so next we have due dates highlighted here. As of right now, we have abstracts due on the 6th, as Jen had noted before, and proposals are due on November 14th. With that said, a government shutdown is looming over our heads, so please pay attention to SAM.gov for any revised dates and or the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox website that might have additional information as well. So award funding here. So I have already gone over the award funding a bit. Again, we are anticipating the BITE, the BIT, and the KILO proposals. All of the conforming proposals will go through the scientific review process. I believe that Jen went over earlier. So, and again, I already covered this, but I won't be awarding any type of procurement contracts nor grants under this module announcement. So you can go to the next slide, please. All right, award types. Let's go over cooperative agreements. So cooperative agreements are a financial assistance that follow regulations underneath the Federal Code of Regulations, which is noted on the slide. For now, ARPA-H also follows health and human services policies too. So this may or may not change by the time we get into awards and the negotiation, but you should write and understand these regulations if that you are going to be receiving a cooperative agreement. So another unique aspect of cooperative agreements is that we anticipate substantial involvement. That means that we do not plan to just give you money, you go do research, and then you give us a report. Right? So that's called a grant, and we won't be pursuing those awards underneath this module announcement. Rather, what you're going to see is that we anticipate collaboration between performers and the government, which then leads to that substantial involvement. So anytime you hear something like an ACA, which Jen talked about earlier, that would indicate that the government is really going to encourage and desire collaboration just between performers and the government at large. Okay, so let's go on to the next slide, please. All right, other transactions are agreements that use an authority different than the cooperative agreements and procurement contracts. So the OTs give us more flexibility to negotiate terms and conditions that represent a win-win for both government and the performer. So for example, we can negotiate intellectual property rights without having to stick to those definitions outlined in the FAR and DFARS, right? So as a performer and as the government, a representative of the government, we can negotiate things that actually make sense for what we are pursuing and doing, all right? So I'll leave it at that for this particular. I think I go over OTs in the next slide as well, so we can move on. Thank you. All right, so here we are going to briefly discuss the pros and cons of each instrument So other transactions, some of these pros I talked about on the previous slide, but wanted to make sure to understand that we aren't limited by the FAR and the DFARs for those of you who are used to doing procurement contracts or having procurement contracts with the government. Because we're not limited by those regulations, we have the ability to invoke more of a commercial negotiation practice, especially, right, like I mentioned, intellectual property rights. There are several other articles that are impacted by not having such hefty regulations on us as well. So you'll see that, and you can also explore other transactions online too. So streamlined award process. So well, obviously I'm stuttering when I talk about this, because I mean, OTs can be streamlined as much as we want to, right? And this is really dependent on the level of negotiation and flexibility of both parties. So we can make this as streamlined as much as we can, right? But I will say though, don't expect something to just go fast, right? An OT can be as fast or slow as it needs to be to get it right. So some of the OT cons is that we see that some organizations are very comfortable with the FAR, right, or the DFARs. This is what they've been doing. This is what they're trained to do. So to switch their thinking and thinking more of that commercial strategy is different, right? So sometimes there is a bit of a learning curve to it. So let's go on to the cooperative agreement pros, which generally I have only awarded cooperative agreements to universities. They are very familiar with the process and the associated regulations. So generally speaking, it goes pretty quickly for the most part. Some cons are that they are set by those regulations, and in some cases, because we are underneath HHS and NIH, right, we follow two different code of federal regulations, right? So we have 2 CFR and 45 CFR, and as you know, I get into this more, just coming over from DARPA here, right? There are some costs that I may not be able, or that are not allowable rather, to you to propose or for me to accept rather. So I just want to note that as you are proposing the cooperative agreement for some universities out there, just be mindful that 2 CFR and 45 CFR are applicable to the regulations that ARPA-H currently awards to. So we can move to the next slide, please. All right, abstract submissions. Abstracts are not mandatory, but we highly encourage them. They should be 4 pages in length. That does not include the cover page or basis of estimate. I have provided a template that was attached to the module announcement, the draft module announcement that is posted on sam.gov. All right, again, you are highly encouraged to use the template for your submission. And I will say, as a note on the slide here, you should submit your abstract to the eCPS system. Do not submit them to the BDF Toolbox email. All right. Proposal submissions should be done in accordance with the stage 1 submission instructions. You'll be submitting other transaction proposals to the eCPS system, and cooperative agreements will be submitted to grants.gov. So please review the MAI and the module announcement prior to submitting your proposal. I also want to note that do not wait until the last day to work through the submission process. Go in and have somebody work through that submission process, making sure you're registered or any steps that you need to do. So don't wait until the last minute to make that a priority for you. Evaluation and selection. So the government will review all conforming proposals against the evaluation criteria noted in the MAI. Right, so please note stage 1 submissions will be evaluated against criterion 1 through 3, and then stage 2 submissions will be evaluated against criterion 4. So again, Please note, you will only submit stage 2 submissions if you receive a request from the government. All right. And as stated earlier and throughout this entire presentation, both the MAI and module announcement are important documents to use throughout the proposal submission process. So please have those available for you throughout this entire process. Right, we can go to the next one. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail or that much details. I'm not going to go over all the evaluation criteria here. This is something that you need to read through and think through and then apply in your proposal response. I just wanted to provide the evaluation criteria to simply remind you that each of the criterion are important. They're affiliated with certain stages. So 1 through 3 will be through stage 1. And then evaluation criteria 4, which is on the next page, will be for stage 2. All right, so again, I encourage you to have both of those documents that I've already talked about, the MAI and the module announcement, with you, next to you, on the same screens as you or the next screen as you, to make sure that you're addressing all of the criteria as you go through. So go to the next one, please. All right, so this is just furtherance of the criteria. So I'm going to push forward to the next slide, but I will say that these slides will be made available to you. But with that said, please note to go to the MAI where the criteria are listed, and that is your document, right? That's your, just that document means more than these slides. That's what I'm trying to convey. So, all right, some important last thoughts. The final MAI and the ARPA-BDF Toolbox module announcement will be posted to sam.gov. I mentioned that earlier. Any official amendments that are made to those documents, right, will also be posted to sam.gov. Those are the official documents. You will also see FAQs posted on sam.gov. Essentially, all important documents associated with the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox requirement will be posted to sam.gov. All right, so you should always go there to rely on that information. You will find other sources of information out there. However, the MAI and the module announcement on sam.gov are the official documents of the government. All right. All right, so just another reminder to thoroughly read and use the MAI and module announcement in the development of your proposal. If your proposal is not conforming to those requirements, the government will not evaluate your proposal, and nobody wants that, right? You spent a lot of time and effort putting it together, and we want to read that. We want it to be the next solution to save the world, right? So to the right of the screen, some more important reminders and important dates and suggestions. So I will say that I've tried to make the submission process as easy as possible with the inclusion of the bundle of attachments. So please use those documents for your submission. And then we can go to the last slide here. I'm going to finish the presentation up by talking about some FAQs. Please read all the documents prior to submitting any additional FAQs to either of the emails noted in the slide. So if after reading through the documents, right, the MAI, the module announcements, the FAQs, perhaps read through them twice, if you still have questions, please please reach out to the respective email addresses listed here. I will note again that the government shutdown is a possibility, and if the shutdown does occur, you will likely see dates and deadlines shift accordingly. All right, and the last thing I like to say is that make sure that you propose to the actual program that's stated within the BDF Toolbox module announcement, rather than what you want the program to be, right? As with every program that I've been with, either at DARPA or here at ARPA-H, I always receive many suggestions, and so does the technical team, to slightly tweak the program to what they want it to be. So we love recommendations. However, at this time, the program has been established. It is written, it is funded as stated. And so we are looking forward to receiving proposals against what the program is as it's written, right? So we appreciate everything. I look forward to seeing your solutions, and I will actually wrap this presentation up, and then we're going to go into the second price and cost proposals as well. So, all right, so I'm going to stay with you here. We can go to the next slide, please. All right, so again, stage 2 is only if you have had your technical solution selected, right, to move on to stage 2, where the government will reach out to you and we will ask you to submit a price and or cost proposal, right? We will provide you that second bundle of attachments that is respective to the volume 2. I will tell you that you don't expect to be asked for a full cost of volume, like many of you may be used to, right? I don't want to review all of your cost elements. But with that said, you should have an idea based off your basic estimate as to how you have reached the prices of respective areas, right? So your labor and labor categories and what you've done to get to that point. So, right, it's the second bullet there, or rather the dash marks here. Right, I'm going to be asking for a price proposal. I'm not going to be asking for a full breakdown in your costs. I will be asking you for the information and assumptions that you have built into your prices, right? So if you do have vendor quotes, if you do have, some of this information that will help us to understand how you reach these prices, that will be helpful. Again, I just want to note here that, so generally speaking, the subcontractor, you would have a full price or cost proposal as well. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the same as the prime, right? So I'm looking for a level of detail that will allow me to understand how you've reached your decision on price, and then also what value it brings to the government for me to approve those prices as reasonable. And of course, those should be aligned to your technical and management approach. So we can go to the next one, please. All right, so the first one is just simply that, again, I've tried to make this as simple as possible. So please use the bundle of attachments that I provide to you. Again, you're going to get one for an OT and there's one for cooperative agreements. Please choose the one that's most appropriate for you. Excuse me. All right, and I think one of the most important things here is don't try to over strategize this in terms of the price of your actual solution, right? Again, we put these categories in place not to stifle your research, not to stifle your ability to get us the best solution, right? So use those category values as a guide, right? But they are not the absolute truth. But I will say that if we are looking for the bit, byte, and kilo, we're simply not looking for the gig at this point, right? So just be mindful of that, and then don't undervalue your research by putting by undervaluing the who you're using to do the research, right? There's a better way to say that, but I think that based on what's on the screen and what I'm trying to convey, you understand, like, don't undervalue yourself here. And then if you're going to submit a spreadsheet, which is not required in the bundle of attachments, right? Please, if you're going to submit it, do not lock it. Allow us to see the values that you've provided us, the the formulas and so on and so forth. So I will leave it at that. If you have any questions, please submit the Q&A and we will make sure to address those.
Great, thanks, Jen. So now we're going to move into frequently asked questions. A number of folks have been emailing questions in advance, and we really appreciate that everyone's taking advantage of that opportunity. So we're going to talk through some of the very common themes, and then if we have time, there's certain themes that have been coming through in the Q&A today that we'll hit on in real time. And for a comprehensive set of answers for the questions that folks are adding to the Q&A today, keep posted, look at our website, because we will be posting comprehensive answers in the future. Okay, so running through some FAQs. How do interested parties sign up for the interested bidders list? Please look on sam.gov. It has an interested vendors list. Folks can look at that pre-solicitation notice in order to add their name and the contact info. In addition, interested parties that are attending today's Proposers Day may also authorize us to provide participant names and contact information to others who were on today's webinar for teaming purposes. What is the relationship between the ARPA-H Biomedical Data Fabric Toolbox solicitation, the MAI solicitation, and the NCI Frederick National Labs solicitation? So the relationship between the two solicitations is one of the most frequently asked questions that we've received to date, and we'll be addressing that more in a couple slides. So stay tuned on more information. What's important to note is that both the ARPA-H and the NCI teams are working very closely together to ensure that responses to the two solicitations are not duplicative and that they will create an overall portfolio that makes sense for the program as a whole. So this is an important note. Each unique proposal should only be submitted to one solicitation. Since we have the same team reviewing all proposals, there is no value add to submitting the same proposal twice. We will only really review it once. So please just select the contracting option that makes the most sense. And again, stay tuned for a couple slides when we'll get into that in more detail. If a proposer submits a proposal with combined technical areas, what are the page restrictions and what are the dollar value restrictions? So the note that this is a change to the draft solicitation. Folks that are putting together a combined proposal will have 35 pages for proposal submissions. And folks who combine technical areas should use the template for the less than or equal to $10 million one. It's worth noting, though, however, that proposers should propose a value that's commensurate with the scope of work proposed, right? So if you're talking about multiple technical areas, it's very important to think about proposing a value that's commensurate with the scope of work proposed. Will ARPA-H consider proprietary, patented, or copyrighted solutions? Must every option be open source? So the goal of the program is to see the establishment of a sustainable open source ecosystem for biomedical data. That means that whenever possible, software, including source code, documentation, technical data, that is generated under the program, i.e. that the ARPA-H program is paying for, should be open sourced or delivered to the government with unlimited rights. However, we are open. We understand that that might not make sense for all companies. So if a company wishes to propose proprietary software, what we would be looking for is a strong case for doing so, why that is still within scope and will help us achieve the program goals. And we're looking for software that will still adhere to open data standards and APIs. And we are looking for the software to be provided with government purpose rights. We noted the lack of methods to protect patient privacy and data sovereignty. I am not pronouncing that correctly today, from cyber attacks, and are seeking to understand ARPA-H's rationale for not acquiring solutions that are compatible with zero trust, et cetera. Thank you for pointing this out. We are amending the solicitation to provide important provisions relative to privacy and security, and really expanding the number of provisions in that section. What's the boundary between TA1 and TA2? Their tasks seem to overlap. Also, the tasks in TA1, TA2, and TA3 seem interdependent and to follow progression. So what's the connection here? So TA1 predominantly focuses on the collection of data in a lab or clinical environment, while TA2 predominantly focuses on the harmonization of data across different repositories. The touch point between TA1 and TA2 occurs when labs submit data to a common location. So TA1 goes through collection to the submission of that data, and then TA2 goes from the time that data is submitted from many different sources to trying to create a foundation that makes it easier to do analysis and search and other things across that consolidated set of data that may be federated. In terms of that touch point, TA1 should focus on streamlining the data submission process so that it's easier think of creating a connection between the software that is providing the data collection in a particular lab or clinical environment, and making so that that data collection software integrates directly with a data submission dashboard, for instance, right? So we're streamlining the process of submission or sharing that is while TA2 is going to focus on making deeper connection across those federated repositories, then TA3 is focusing on the user interface components, particularly for data discovery. Then it's also worth noting that TA1, TA2, and TA3 also differ in the scale and the user type. So TA1 tools should focus on making the individual researcher's job easier by reducing the amount of effort that they take collecting data and also providing feedback when they submit data to a central repository. TA2 should assist those that are managing the data repositories by helping accelerate data curation and helping to make connections across repositories, creating the foundations that make it easier to search and find data and help make it accessible. TA2 should also focus on things like semantic connections and semantic interoperability. And then TA3 should focus on the end users, the people who are analyzing or exploring the data in order to make it easier for them to both find what they're looking for, take advantage of natural language queries in order to perform explorations, and for them to understand the strengths and the weaknesses of the data that they access. In terms of where to propose, if your approach predominantly focuses on one of those technical areas, even if it bridges a little bit into those touch points, if it's predominantly in one area, like lab automation, then propose to that technical area. So if it's predominantly lab automation, propose to TA1. If it's predominantly harmonization or semantic interoperability, focus on TA2. And then if folks are proposing to a single technical area, be sure to define the touch point and talk about how you plan to interface with other performers in other technical areas. If folks are interested in looking at a comprehensive workflow that goes from data collection through harmonization to data exploration or some other bridge across those touch points, then we'd encourage you to submit a multi-TA proposal in order to look holistically at those connections. Can the government provide details about the NCATS N3C architecture? There is more information on their website, and it's worth noting so one of the things that we're interested in is leveraging prior government investments that are related to the Data Fabric effort. Nonetheless, an unattended consequence that we want to avoid is we do not want hundreds of people reaching out to NCATS in order to try and get more information about their program because, well, the government may or may not shut down next week. And also we don't want to overwhelm our colleagues there. So it is not necessary that folks talk directly with the NCATS N3C performers. Instead, look at the information that's already available online. And please do be courteous because we don't want to inadvertently overwhelm our colleagues over in NCATS. Can ARPA-H further elaborate on the reason for encouraging applicants to collaborate with N3C as opposed to other EHR-focused collaborations? So at a high level, the government's interested in leveraging, extending, and integrating across semantic interoperability technologies that have been developed through prior government investments. We're especially interested in extending these open source components that have been developed by members of the computer science research community. So that's really a focus. And importantly, the government is not excluding the potential for other EHR collaboratives. We just feel like it's prudent, a prudent use of government funds to maximize the benefits of the substantial investment and demonstrated success of N3C. So folks could anticipate that, just as we talk about these ACAs and making sure you're collaborating with other performers in the program, you could anticipate that there may be a partnership with N3C as part of this program. Then if the government shuts down, will there be any impact to this solicitation, deadlines, etc.? That is a wonderful question. It is at front of mind for many folks. And unfortunately, we will not have complete information until the next week or the next couple weeks unfold. So please do monitor the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox website for updates on potential impacts. So talking a little bit more about the solicitations and which solicitations might be good for a particular approach. I think one of the biggest distinctions has to do with TA1. If folks are interested in novel automation to streamline data collection across multiple labs, in the ARPA-H solicitation, there's interest in that type of software solution and testing it out in at least 3 different laboratories. That's unique to the ARPA-H solicitation. The NCI Frederick Lab solicitation has more of an emphasis on a data submission dashboard for cancer. So if you're interested in contributing to that data submission dashboard, I'd recommend exploring the Frederick National Lab solicitations. Other distinctions in terms of use cases, the ARPA-H solicitation provides several different options. So use cases that generalize across diseases from day one, bridging across data silos, and then having a progression that starts with cancer and then extends to multiple diseases over the course of the effort. Whereas the Frederick National Lab effort will start with cancer and then generalize to other diseases. In terms of expertise, if folks have expertise that generalizes across disease types, we'd encourage you to investigate the ARPA-H solicitation, whereas if you have very deep expertise that's very specific to cancer, Frederick National Labs may be a good fit. And then in terms of contracting preference, the ARPA-H solicitation will be awarding cooperative agreements and other transactions, while for the Frederick National Labs effort, folks will become subcontractors to Frederick National Labs. Again, to reiterate, this is a very important point. Each unique proposal should only be submitted to one solicitation because the ARPA-H and the NCI teams will be working together to review all proposals, and funding decisions will be made at a portfolio level across the joint set of proposal submissions. Okay, so then just pinging some folks here for time. I think we might have time to go through a couple of the questions that have come in through the Q&A. Thank you guys for submitting. So I'll run through some. And again, if we don't get to your question today, it means that we will post a more comprehensive FAQ in the future. So there were questions about the abstract deadline. We are extending the abstract deadline to 10/6. Abstracts are optional. And the benefit for submitting an abstract is that the team, the ARPA-H team, will provide feedback. So if you want to get an early sense of what, whether a particular idea is in scope, the abstracts are a good way to do that. Again, they're not required, but they're highly encouraged. Folks were asking about if you submit an abstract and you're thinking of having multiple technical areas. Is that one abstract? Is that more than one abstract? Either way can work. If it's a stronger case to put it all together so that we can see the comprehensive picture, then submit one. If you think that being able to really get into more technical detail on the components of the approach is going to give you more meaningful information, send that. The goal of the abstract phase is for us to provide feedback to you so that we can have stronger proposals. A question from very early in the presentation where we were talking about the ARPA-H ecosystems. There's a question about whether policy experts are part of the ecosystem. Great question. Yes, policy experts are a very important part of the ecosystem, and we do also work very closely with our regulatory partners at organizations like FDA and ONC. In order to make sure that we have a clear regulatory pathway for emerging technologies. Great question. Then there's some questions that have come up about particular types of approaches. So for example, what about decision support for what data to collect, right? So something that would allow you to figure out which data would be the best next thing to measure, or things related to privacy protection that goes beyond de-identification. Are these of interest? Yes, we're interested in a broad set of different ideas. And if you would like more specific feedback on whether a particular idea is in scope, I'd encourage you to submit an abstract. There are a number of questions about what types of data repositories in general. When we're talking about data repositories, think about data repositories that you're already familiar with that are already supported by the NIH ecosystem. That is a good set of assumptions to use for writing a proposal. There's a question about whether ARPA-H is specific in collecting a very particular type of data or collecting all data. And for this effort, we're interested in expanding the sets of data, the types of data that can be meaningfully used down the road. So we're interested in improving that data usability piece and broadening the set of data that can be meaningfully analyzed. So is new data collection in scope? So new data collection is not, it's importantly not the emphasis for this effort. So we are not trying to create a brand new type of repository for this effort. Nonetheless, if we think about something like TA1, and in particular the parts of TA1 that are talking about data collection, automation in a lab environment, in order to be able to meaningfully test that, having additional data collection is going to be an important part of the test and evaluation. So within that piece, you can think about the new data collection as being an important mechanism that's in scope for testing the novel software methods, which are the focus of this effort. Is user tested precluded for TA3? Meaning, for TA3, that involves user interfaces. Can TA3 performers also do user testing on their own outside of what's happening in TA4? Yes, TA3 performers are encouraged to also perform their own user testing. TA4 is intended to perform an independent evaluation across the program. There's a question about COIs with TA5. This time, we do not anticipate that there will be COIs with TA5. If folks are proposing multiple TAs, should they submit multiple proposals or a joint proposal? If you would like to propose to multiple TAs, a joint proposal is encouraged. And then there's an emphasis on, or there's a couple questions about what the emphasis of the effort is. For the BDF Toolbox effort, the focus is on the development of tools, software, and methods that make it easier to share and use data. Again, new data collection can be in scope to test the software methods, but new data collection is not the primary focus of this effort. There's, again, a number of questions about data sets and ways in which we might conform with different types of policies. For the purposes of writing a proposal, think about the data repositories that already exist at NIH, as well as the NIH policies that are in place to protect those data sets. And it's safe to assume that we will leverage existing best practices and policies that have already provided a nice foundation for data sharing at across the various ICs at NIH. And please use the paradigms that you are already familiar with at NIH to make simplifying assumptions when you are proposing. There was questions about the broad agency announcement, just flagging again. For this one, we are doing an MAI. The MAI solicitation, as Jennifer Mack mentioned, has already been posted on the website, and it's there. There's questions about bit, byte, and kilo. Are those total award values or annual values? Those are intended to be total award values. In terms of the turnaround for abstracts, our goal is to provide feedback within approximately a week. Now, of course, that's going to depend on two key factors. One will be the number of abstracts that receive, and the other one will be whether the government is open. So again, look at the website if you want more up-to-date information there. Folks were asking about the number of awards. The number of awards will depend on the quality of proposals received. And then there were also questions about how to propose 24, 36 months. So each proposal should include a 24-month base period with a 12-month option. And the 12-month option would focus on the integration and the maturation of the technology. Jennifer Mack, are there any questions that you noticed in the Q&A that you wanted to cover today?
No, you've actually gone over most of them, Jen, so thanks.
Okay. So I know we only have a few minutes left. Why don't we go ahead and wrap for today? Thank you, everybody, for joining, and thank you for the great questions in the Q&A. Again, if we did not manage to get to your question today, please do stay tuned. We will be posting an FAQ. And we look forward to receiving abstracts. Abstracts are always a wonderful way to get feedback from the team. So if you have a question about your particular approach, or also teaming approaches, that was another question that I didn't get to. So it's possible to submit an abstract and say, I'm thinking about this teaming approach, or submitting an abstract in advance of a full teaming approach. And you can get feedback on that type of question as well. So if you would like to have further feedback from the team, we would encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. So great. Thanks everybody for joining today. We hope to see some really wonderful, innovative ideas for the ARPA-H BDF Toolbox effort. And we look forward to engaging with this community more. Thanks, everybody.